Welcome to Empower and Evolve, and I'm your host, Dunstan, and thanks for coming into today's episode. Now, this podcast is designed for those looking to break free from stagnation and enhance their well being through actionable insights and inspiring stories. So you'd never miss an episode, hit that follow button and follow us through our social media accounts. Now, if you find value in our discussions, consider sharing this podcast with friends who you think might benefit listening today. Now, let's get started on this journey of empowerment and transformation. Hi, everyone. Done here, and thanks for coming back to Empower and Evolve. Now, last week we talked about my favorite episodes, and pretty much that's a brief introduction of what's to come for year two. Now, like how I ended last week's episode, I told you we're gonna move into a question and answer approach. And to kick off the first official episode after the anniversary episode, I have today someone who's an advocate of empowering people just like myself. Professionally, she's also an HR practitioner. On the side, aside from being an advocate of empowerment, she's also my social media manager, my podcast editor, and I guess the most important of all of the things that I could describe my guest for today, she's my partner in life. So let's welcome and say hi to my editor and my partner, Deej Sanchez.
Hi, Dan.
All right.
Thanks for having me on this episode.
So I'm kind of scared because this is the first time I'm gonna be on board on my own podcast where I'm gonna be the one being asked. So I know I've been in your podcast at one point, and I'll mention that maybe later. So I guess I'll give you the floor and start shooting away.
I'm really excited to be part of this episode of Empower and Evolve. It's really an honor to join you and contribute to the amazing community you've built. So I have to say that I'm so grateful to be one of the people behind the podcast. And I believe your vision and commitment to empowering others through meaningful conversation is truly inspiring.
No, thank you.
So, are you ready?
Well, just like I say, you can never be ready unless you're there. So shoot away. Or should I say, let's dive in.
Let's dive in. Okay. So my first question is, what inspired you to start the Empower and Evolve podcast?
Okay. Well, when I started, well, there were three reasons why I started Empower and Evolve or this podcast, right? The first one would be my experience while I was functioning different leadership roles in the BPO space. Because that's the majority of my work. I had the chance to work with people below me and even people below my supervisors because I was a manager for quite some time. And through those interactions with them, I had a chance to have that heart to heart conversation. I mean, I don't want to go into the details or even cite names because I mentioned one in one of my prior episodes. Um, but what I realized out of that, and what's the common thing that I was getting out of it, was people were telling me that I made an impact with their lives because of that one
Mhm.
off conversation. Whether, and take note, I mean, the conversations weren't really about work. It wasn't about their metrics, it wasn't about their performance. These were conversations that was related to their personal development, to their personal relationships, whether it's in their family, whether it's with their siblings, with their children, and maybe general outlook in life. So when I
Mhm.
think about that, and they were telling me, boss, you should do counseling. I think you could do that as a side job. So I was like, maybe, no, but I like what I'm doing back then, right?
Mhm.
The second thing that influenced me to be in this space is um, the people before working. I was part of a youth organization, church youth organization. At some point, I was a member of a peer counseling group. And maybe that's where it all stemmed from, I guess. But when I think about that peer counseling group, I would imagine I was like 14, 15. And when you say
Mhm.
youth in a church organization, that's anyone between 13 to 39.
Okay.
So that's a huge age bracket. And there will be instances because I do not know who's going to be assigned to me when I do peer counseling. There were a few instances I was talking to people in their 30s and I was 15. I was half their age. And even with that age gap, I was able to understand where they're coming from. I was able to communicate with them and help them, you know, to cut that long story short, right? And lastly, the third reason why I started this podcast is when my mom had cancer, and I mentioned that during my Mother's Day episode, right? I it had the podcast actually happened after I found out about my mom's cancer. A few months before, actually, I started the podcast or decided to start the podcast. And something that sticked with me was if that day comes that it's my turn to move to the afterlife, what legacy do I leave the people around? How do I want to be remembered? Right. And given that I have a daughter, you know, who in his own little way, with minimal budget, right? He's doing one, his passion, which is like to talk. Obviously, that's what I like to do. I like to talk. Two, help others.
Okay.
Three, be genuine with yourself, right? And through me discovering that passion, that understanding of better understanding of who I am and understanding what I can do. I want her to remember that as she grows older, she has the capacity to be better every single time when she wants to. And if she puts her heart and her effort into it. And I guess that's the same lesson I want every single listener in this podcast. Because I personally, at some point, went to the dark side. If you guys,
Okay.
the early part of the episodes, I mentioned about my dark side, my dark past. And you know, for someone who has gone through that phase and moved out, I think it's something of a legacy you want to be remembered by. That I was a survivor. I went to that dark phase, and everybody at some shape and form will go through their own version of that dark phase, of that dark side. But there is always a way out of that dark side, and doing suicide is definitely not an option. There will always be someone out there who will be willing to listen, be willing to help you out, and go through with you in your journey. Yep. So that's it.
That's nice. It really shows in every episode your passion. Now, what themes or topic do you find most rewarding to discuss on your podcast?
Oh wow, that's a very hard one. When I think about themes or topics that uh I guess that has the most impact, or I'd say the most relevant,
Mm-hmm.
I would say pretty much every topic. Imagine if one topic I covered has helped one person in 1 year of 52 episodes, I have helped 52 people. So regardless if there were like 52 people and only one person was inspired or was helped by that one episode, it's relevant as it is. And just like what other podcasters would say, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Whatever they listen, they have the right to either ingest it or reject it. And
I
that's the
agree.
same concept and same belief I have. That every episode I have, it's not gonna be always fit for everyone. But I'm hopeful that at least one in every 52 people who listens to it resonates with it, right? Or it helps them through their own journeys. Now, of course, when I make the content, I have to be mindful, very,
Yes.
very mindful, because the audience is very diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, age bracket is very diverse. You've mentioned, you've heard, you yourself heard as well, that through my episodes, I've been mentioning like people in their high school, or people who are already in the professional phase, or even, retiring, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be careful of the words that I use, if not how I put real life anecdotal stories that at some point, yeah, that resonates with me. I also had a similar experience. At the same time, I also believe that having that mindset of helping others crosses religion. Sorry, does not have any religion. Um, does not have any race or ethnicity, and definitely does not have any sexual preference.
Mm-hmm.
So the content that I do every single time I make one, I have to make sure it covers all of these, whether they're part of the LGBTQ plus plus. I mean, sorry, I could be wrong. I mean, I don't remember the rest of the letters, right? Or whether they're straight, whether they're Filipinos, whether they're Americans, Europeans. It doesn't matter. It's universal. I mean, for the lack of a better term, the content that I aim for is universal. And as much as possible, it's something that can survive if you listen to it and still has relevance even 10 years from now. That longevity and that legacy that I want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to live by, or to live by, rather.
Absolutely. And we know that this podcast is such a powerful tool.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I
Speaking
agree.
of which, how do you think hosting a podcast has contributed to your personal growth?
Oh, wow. Well, I definitely experience growing in this
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And when I say growing, you know that I mentioned to you offline, right? I am a firm believer of continuous learning, continuous education. I mean, learning stops
Yes.
either two things: you're dead, or you just don't want to ingest what you're learning.
Yes.
Okay. So with technology coming into play, AI is there already, pandemic happened. Um, I learned as well, I learned through the pandemic how to survive. I also had the time now to be able to understand the other aspects of social media. Because personally, I like to keep my social media rather, really private. So I don't really read so much about everyone else's social media, or for that matter, podcasting. But the, pan- the this podcast has taught me, one, that I there's no one there's it, I mean, age is not a deterrent factor for you to learn something new.
Yes, I
As
agree.
long as you have the interest, as long as you want to put the time, the effort, and the passion, and you have the passion for it, right? When you try to find your ikigai, you have to understand what you're good at, what you can get paid for, what the world needs right now. And when I think about my experiences before and the skills that I have, although I know I'm not refined, I'm not great, because I right now, even if I'm doing this for more than a year now, and even if I was working in the BPO for more than a decade, I still
Mm-hmm.
find people who can be really eloquent, who can really be impromptu when they're talking, and at the same time, you'll get very valuable insights from them. They have substance, they have the right framework, they can communicate pretty well, and the message that they're relaying is very, very powerful.
So I get inspired by those, and I still learn. I still watch videos.
Mhm.
I spend the time to read, listen to other podcasters to get inspired as well. Um, so those are the things that I guess I learned from it. That's one. Two, um, although I'm very talkative, I'm actually kind of an introvert, right? Nobody believes that I'm an introvert. I remember I told that in one of the leadership classes I training that we did recently when I said
Yeah.
I'm an introvert and I was a podcaster and they were in total disbelief, right? And
But I know you are.
yeah, and being an introvert is not bad, and being an introvert and a podcaster, although it sounds weird, it these are two separate personalities,
Yeah.
and that's something I've learned to live by. That yes, I have my personal character, my real personal character outside, but I'm not saying that it's not authentic, but it's just me putting an avenue where everything that is in between my ears when I'm an introvert mode gets shared online. That's the time that I get a chance to speak to public events or
Mhm.
even have coffee sessions, right? Those conversations over coffee with good friends. Those are the thoughts that an introvert has, and that person can only share that thought if he or she's comfortable with the people around them. So that's the bridge I had to learn, that I will be comfortable in front of the mic talking to thin air. And most of the time, remember when I do my recording, it's just me in the room and pretty much no one else, right? So it's kind of hard for me to go through that, imagining I have my set of friends in front of me, or I'm in front of a big group
Proud.
and
Mhm.
I'm discussing a certain topic.
Mhm.
So that's the second, I guess, the second border or second challenge that I learned through it. Last lesson that I was able to get out of doing podcasting is that technology is your ally, right? Similar to what I said, that you're never going to be too old to learn new things. People
Mhm.
with now who understands that AI is pretty much taking over the world. That's why it's better to go to farming right now or go to the
Yes.
mountains, because at some point everything collapses and the only thing that's left is everything that's just planted on the ground. But when you talk about technology as a friend now, you can just imagine if I'm doing podcast every week and I have a regular 8 to 5 job, I wouldn't have enough time to read through books, go to seminars.
Mhm.
I ask the AI to gather me the resource materials that I need to read. Sometimes I ask it to give me a synopsis. If I feel I need to dive in, I give me the link. I just go through it. If there's a video, I watch the video, and you know, it really cuts the time. Imagine if being a weekly podcaster um, is just a hobby job, or is your passion project, and you have a regular 8 to 5 40-hour week job. Pretty much, you'll be spending 2 to 3 hours every day just reading, another two to
Mhm.
three hours for editing, another 2 hours for recording. Plus, of course, you have still need to put time for your socials, uh, for your family, for your friends, for your practicing your faith, and doing the chores in between, like washing dishes, doing your laundry and stuff. So, in 7 days may not be enough, but because I'm able to capitalize technology as an ally, pretty much I have enough time for being able to do a lot of things I want to do.
Mhm.
Right? So that's it.
That's really insightful. And I can totally relate because podcasting have a way of expanding our horizons,
Yes, it
right?
does.
So what has been the biggest challenge you've faced as podcaster and how did you overcome it?
Oh wow. Biggest challenge.
I would say there are three. I always believe the power of three. So the first one is overcoming my shyness. Okay. Because I'm different outside. Right? Tend to be a little more reserved. Second is being able to have enough time to not only ingest materials, doing the research, but in after ingestion is to process everything and then cough up something new or something really valuable, something insightful, whether it's me giving tips or pointers as you go through changes, whether it's me creating an activity sheet, just like what I've been doing in
Mhm.
the past for the first year. Excuse me. So these things, I really need to spend time. So that second half of after the ingestion is to cut off those things. That's me being able to manage my time and tasks better. I guess that's the use of the technology there, understanding and capitalizing technology. And then the last challenge I have is at some point, and I'll be honest, at some point, especially in the first few episodes,
Episodes.
right? The first few episodes, I think the first three or the first four episodes, I had so many ideas in my head of what content do I really want to put out there.
Mhm.
And it was I wouldn't say it doesn't have any theme. It doesn't have a continuity to it. As like if for you guys who are just new to the podcast, if you listen to the fifth episode up until maybe the one 2 weeks prior, the content is segmented every month for a certain topic. Unlike the first month, wherein we talked about how it all began. I talked about um, the going through the loss of a loved one, learning the art of saying no. I mean, these are very random topics, but really didn't have that much direction until we both sat down and say maybe that we need to organize it, right? Because there's so many things you want to do. There's so many things I want to share, experiences and tips maybe along the way that I want to be able to put out there for anyone's consumption. But we needed to put a framework. We needed to put um an approach wherein it can be ingested better.
Mhm.
And then coming from the feedback that we've received for the first year, we're changing how the second year is gonna look like. We're gonna make it more easier, more casual. So yes, I have started to fall in love with the mic. Now I will learn how to fall in love with the camera. And imagine that every single time I'm going to do my recording now, I am seeing someone at the other side of the table,
Yes.
as if they're really there, and be able to look at them in the eye, just like me looking
Mhm.
at the camera. So that's gonna be
Mhm.
an art and a skill that I honestly will have to go through the first few weeks, and I really apologize about that. It made life look awkward, but I'll get there. Definitely, I will get there. We'll make it just like I mentioned last week. We're gonna make it more candid, more casual.
Mhm.
Just changing the. And again, I'm sorry I'm rambling out here because I'm so excited that's gonna happen, for the second year.
I
Plus,
know.
I know I shouldn't be sharing this, but I am working on a ebook. I will not share the details yet. But this is a byproduct of the first year, something I picked up along the first year that I think would be a good supplemental, especially for those people who'd like to take personality development on a serious level and let it be part of their daily lives. I think
Mhm.
yeah, I'll just keep my mouth shut. But I maybe give me early in January. It's gonna be up there. I just need to make sure that everything's coherent and it's on cue. for our listeners. I mean,
That's nice.
hopefully before Christmas. Let's see.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you don't include uh having a hard time to deal with your editor as part of the challenges.
Oh yes. Editor challenges. Well, there were challenges last year, the first year. Remember, there were. I think I wouldn't count. I wouldn't really remember the number of times we're in. We didn't have the episode was launched not on the planned date and time.
Yeah.
It's either there were technology challenges. Internet was down, laptop crashed, editor was sick, I was sick, so I
Editor
didn't
forgot that
didn't have
it's
any
already
voice,
Friday.
and I forgot it's Friday. I mean, there's so many lessons from last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's beginner lessons
Yeah.
because these are instances wherein even the most experienced podcasters will encounter
Definitely.
it. I mean, there's sometimes planning is not enough, or you thought you've planned enough for it, but circumstances will just throw you a curveball, and you'll just be surprised. As shucks, we didn't plan for this.
Things really happen,
Yeah,
right?
so we'll try to be more consistent for year two. I mean, after all of the lessons, I think we've listed all of the possible reasons why our content will not be launched on the planned date or the
Mm-hmm.
planned date and time. Yeah, so I think we've listed
Yes.
out. We've already covered pretty much everything. I hope, except for a
Okay.
zombie apocalypse and a meteorite crashing on planet Earth. I think those are the only two we haven't listed down as a backup plan of what are we going to do. But I think outside of that, I think we should be okay.
And in case of war.
And in case of war.
Okay. Lastly, what advice would you give to someone who is considering starting their own podcast?
Okay. Ooh. Starting their own podcast requires you to be talkative for sure. Because imagine you'll be on the mic for 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes, talking about a certain topic.
Mhm.
Two, um, when you want to do your podcast, you have to understand what is your niche. Because if your podcast content is very random at some point, although randomness has a certain is a niche in itself, if you really want to be able to get the right audience to resonate with you, find your niche. Like in my case, my niche is about personality development, self help, right? Empowerment. I mean, these are very very specific niches, if I say so. There's a handful of us in this market,
Mhm.
right? But and third, um, make sure that the niche is something that you are very well equipped,
Mhm.
and you either you're very well equipped or you're equipped at the very least. You can talk about it. You're knowledgeable about it. If not, be able to get the right resources on hand even before you start recording an episode and doing the research. I mean, the audience will always know if you just researched it earlier today and the episode came out today, honestly. Um, and audiences love authenticity. That's something you have to.
Yes.
Authenticity is very, very important nowadays. Um, so after understanding authenticity, I guess the last tip that I could tell or I could share for anyone who wants to be a podcaster is be
Mhm.
consistent
Yes.
and have the commitment. A lot of people, and I use this as an example, Mr. Beast. If I'm pretty sure you're familiar, and a lot of our listeners are very familiar with that, with him rather.
Mhm.
His first few videos, pretty much were very random
Mhm.
until such time he hit a jackpot video. I can remember what was the video all about, and that's where everything started to snowball, and his channel grew.
He started to have followers, started to have subscribers, and the rest is history. But on one interview about him and his YouTube channel, he was asked about if there's one thing he learned from it, it was being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. The first few episodes, pretty much the only people who'll be listening to your episode would be your friends. And you're lucky if your friends and your family are, if 100% of them will listen, and I'll be very honest with that, you'll be lucky to have maybe 20 to 30% of your friends and family to listen to your episode. Um, but as soon as you start to share and have them share it, some you'll be surprised that your friend, like a third degree of friendship, we don't really know the person perhaps, um, is the one who's gonna be really following you, really going to be interactive with your podcast, or even sharing that to the other people that he or she knows. And that's
Yes.
where it starts to roll. So whenever you have a dip, and expect that the start will be a dip. And even in your first year, it may not be successful as how you envision it. Always remember that why you started it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because it's a passion? Is it an avenue for you to distress yourself? Is it a source of income? And mind you, like here in the Philippines, a lot of podcasters have already moved out on a certain platform because it's non-monetized.
Yes.
I will not drop any names, nor I will not drop which was. But aside from them having the passion to talk about a certain topic, another
Mm-hmm.
avenue they have is because they want to have revenue,
Yes.
right? In my case, I'm still keeping the same platform. I'm adding additional platforms, not
Mm-hmm.
because I want to be able to earn, but I realized that if my plan was to really to reach out to more people, then use the medium where the people are.
Yes.
And before I was kind of shy of doing that because I was like camera shy and stuff. I
And I'm so happy that you finally say yes.
I have to.
You have
I
no
made
choice.
I made the deal, so I have to keep my word on that deal. That the first year, no video whatsoever, no TikTok reels or what have you, or anything outside of this um, avenue,
Spotify. Mm-hmm.
Spotify, right? And then we'll just rediscuss and see come second year.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we had a discussion and yeah, be ready to accept the fact that yes, you will have to be able to be ready to not be camera shy. To love the camera, love the microphone, love talking to yourself because pretty much when you're doing your podcast, if you're doing it alone, like in my case, you only have an imaginary friend in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the if you're not comfortable going solo, if you have a partner that you want to be in the same podcast with you, that's okay. Like Jim Rogan, he has his podcast. He has always someone as a guest. I think there's like usually two or three in every time he has his episode. So he has someone who can really talk to and exchange conversations, and that's his approach in his podcast, right? Unlike other podcasts I know, like Rob Dial's the Mindset Mentor podcast. It's just by himself. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So you have to be able to embrace that and overcome that. And I'm dropping these names not to um what do you call that? Advertise them, right? But I listen to them. Well, not really everyone, but some of them that has gone through my feeds as well. And you can use those as an examples of how you want to attack your own podcast. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, just smile, because it's not gonna be fun. I will tell you, especially if you know you're cramped, you have deadlines, you're cramped for time. But always remember that you have to smile because you wanted to do this. Whatever frustration that comes along the way when you do your podcast, you have to embrace that this is part of your growth. This is part of your journey, right? And just like us, we always go back to our motto. Why do we do this?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So that's it.
Okay. So thanks for having me. I genuinely enjoy this conversation, although we often do this offline or off the record. Your passion for empowering others really shine through. And I can see why Empower and Evolve podcast has become such a valuable resource for so many. So I would like to take this opportunity to really congratulate you. You just don't know how happy I am,
Thank you. Thank you.
how how grateful I am to be part of this this journey, and I'm so proud of you. I'm really excited to see where this next year takes you.
Well, I'm excited too, but I guess one thing that you can look out for is I have a talk in November, an speaking engagement in November in here in the Philippines in BGC for a company slated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say the exact date or where it's gonna be, where the event's gonna happen, but in the first week of November in BGC. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a fruit of what happened the first year. I get to have more speaking engagements. Like last month, we did a leadership 2-day training for a
Yeah.
company that covered both leadership and frontline employees, and it's a huge group, right? It's a huge.
Yes, it is.
So that's what the effect of the resilience you build as you build your product, because at some point it will reach certain audiences, and it
Mm-hmm.
gives avenues as well, for other avenues for you to be able to practice what you love to do, right?
Okay.
All right, so I guess that's all we have for today. Thank you so much everyone for listening. Thank you, Deej, for being my co-host for today.
My
And
pleasure. Always my pleasure, Dan.
I'm looking forward to be guesting in your podcast. By the way, guys, she
Yeah.
has her own podcast. um do you want to share a little bit about your podcast before we close out today, or
Oh well.
plug it next time?
Try to listen to my podcast. It's in the raw. It was on Spotify also. So now you give me reason to update it.
Yes. So that's a actually the just my 2 cents that in the Raw podcast, if Empower and Evolve is aimed at personality development, in the
Mm-hmm.
Raw talks about things that we call the elephant in the room, things that we were
Yep.
afraid to ask another person, topics that we're afraid that if we ask this question we might feel judged.
Mm-hmm.
And although I know that the podcast is non-political, there's no political conversations around it.
Yes.
But because I know some of the people may think it's a political podcast, or something around
No,
that,
no, no.
or even religion, talking about religion versus religion. No, it's not about that. It's about day-on-day lives of people and the questions they have in between their ears, inside their head, that they're afraid to ask another person because they might feel judged, or just
Mm-hmm.
understanding and picking up someone's brain, right? So that's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to get picked on my brain getting picked on that episode, on one of your episodes. Um, and that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to today's episode. And remember, here at Empower and Evolve, our goal is to help you become a better version of you. And with that, stay safe. Catch you next week. Take care. Bye for now.
Hey, buddy. Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey of empowerment and growth. Now remember, it's not just about evolving. It's about embracing that incredible power within you to become the best version of yourself. Keep striving for greatness, because together, we can create a world where empowerment knows no bounds. And if you find value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with someone who could use that little inspiration. Until next time, stay empowered, stay inspired, and keep shining brightly on your path to evolution. With Empower and Evolve, you have the tools to unleash your potential and rewrite your story. Let's continue to evolve